welcome Mr. Catalog. That's the name you are internationally known with, and it might be the shortest description of what you are doing. Since 2015, you have been publishing the bilingual Catalog Journal of Photography and Video. The magazine exists for highly respectable 31 years now, and it is part of a lot of international platforms, networks, and festivals. Jens, you're not only doing catalog. From 2003 to 2016, you was the curator in charge of the photographic collection at Museet for Fotokunst in Odense, as well as the artistic co-director of the Danish photo festival Photo Triennale DK. As an author, Jens writes about Danish photography. In 2004, for example, he published the book Dansk Fotografiehistorie. I hope I pronounced it well. In English, it's easier, Danish photographic history. Today, Jens, you will focus mainly on your works with catalog and Danish photography books. Jens, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Sabine, and thank you, Selena, for inviting me. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be invited. I wish I could be in Frankfurt. My presentation is going to be twofold. I have to correct something first. I didn't write a book on Danish photography historia. It was Mette Sandby, who was the editor. I only wrote a chapter of the book. So I should share the screen. It's going to be twofold. One is to present you with the magazine that I otherwise would have brought with me to Frankfurt and handed out copies to each and one of the participants in the audience. And the other part of my presentation is going to be 4 selected books, Danish recent publications. And I'm not going to disclose what titles there are now, so you have to wait until the end of my presentation. Catalog, Journal of Photography and Video. Is it an international journal with a Nordic point of view, or is it Nordic journal with an international point of view? And why is it named Catalog? Some of my colleagues, when I go to festivals, they always ask me, why do you call it catalog when it's a magazine? Now, the reason is, it used to be a catalog. It used to be an exhibition catalog, or that's what the foundation, that's the base of the magazine was. Because it was born out of Museet for Fotokunst, as you said, Sabine, a museum that was founded in the mid-80s. And obviously, as a museum, you want to put out exhibition catalogs. These 20 pages publications, the director found out, will only sell during the exhibition and maybe a couple of months after the exhibition. But after that, he would end up with sitting on boxes and boxes of these exhibition catalogs. And so he put his head together with Henning Wettendorf, the founding editor of the magazine, and said, how do we solve this? Anyway, after that, they put their heads together and they found out that they should do a magazine and call it Catalog. Since the idea was to include the shows that were the current shows at the museum in this magazine, together with other topics, current topics, what they would find, Finn Trana, the director, and Henning Wettendorf would find at festivals and through networking. And also the magazine was used as a point of exchange. As a museum, you will always want other colleagues from other museums, you want to show them what you're actually doing. So they exchanged catalog and got Aperture and got European Photography, Source, lots of other magazines, as well as exhibition catalogs from sister museums all over the world. So it was meant as a business card. The idea, as I said, was to use half of the magazine, roughly half of the magazine, of what was current at the museum, and the other half was what current internationally. Henning Wettendorf was the editor for the first 15 years of the magazine's existence, and he took it from being a strictly Danish platform to a quarterly magazine for photography. Implying that the language shifted from only Danish to also including English, not only in a summary but in parallel text in a different column. And he took it through various stages of sizes. So in the 90s, late 90s, he made it almost like something you would read in cafes when you were out sipping your cappuccino and you looked in the mirrors and you were making sure that everybody could see that you're an intelligent and artist appreciator. You would have this huge catalog in front of you. Roundabout here, this is the first issue that I did, and I was called in by Finn Trane, the museum director, in 2003. He needed a person to take over from Henning because Henning decided that it was time to step back, and Finn Trane told me that I had to maintain the same size because the subscribers expected the same size just to run out the year. And this first issue was with the famous Danish actor and photographer as well, Vigo Mortensen. And that was a huge success, not only for the museum that showed his work, but also for Catalog. And the curator was Liz Steinke, one of my colleagues, and she retired right after this show because that was a huge bang. And it was a great way of leaving with a huge bang instead of just fizzling out. And Finn looked at me and said, "Oh, Jens, maybe you want to be a curator as well." I said, "Sure, let's have another cap." And I took another cap, and it turned out that I also became the, as you said, Sabina, the artistic co-director of a festival that he did the same year. So I was actually wearing 3 caps. And I was also given the task of redesigning Catalog because it was quite expensive to publish. It was either cutting down the costs of the magazine or simply scrapping the magazine altogether. And of course, I would be stupid to advise my director to scrap the magazine because that would mean that I would lose my job. So I decided to tweak a little bit and find some vents that I could turn off or make it a little bit less expensive. Once was to downsize it, and I played around with different formats together with a designer in Copenhagen. And when we were finished playing around with this size, I put it next to fellow or competitors, I should say, magazines. And it turned out that the size that I've chosen as the best size was the exact same size as the early Apertures, the Aperture magazine, way back when Minor White was the editor of the magazine. So I thought, okay, this seems to be a good classic size. It worked for Minor White, so maybe it works for Jens Friis as well. And it certainly did. It did for the next 10 or 15 years, I guess. I didn't change much of the layout. I pumped up a few more pages in it, and I had the good fortune of collaborating with a lot of good people outside the museum. I rarely write text for the magazine. Finn Trane, obviously, as the museum director, had to write texts, introduction texts to the shows that he had curated. But otherwise, I would let other people write texts in the magazine. Here's a example of a layout, Thomas Floreschutz, who you might know in Germany. I had the great fortune of showing his work 2014, maybe even earlier. And of course, I had a presentation by Daniel Schreiber, who's well versed in Thomas Floreschutz's work. With issue 25.3, 25 is the volume year. So we've reached year 25. And the 3 after 25 means the issue number 3 of that year. Catalog reached a sort of a turning point. The cover is by Jörg Skriver. We were really celebrating at the museum because 25 years, after all, is a long time for a museum. At the Jubilee Festival, the mayor came up to us and said, "Congratulations," the mayor of Odense, where the museum is situated. He came up to us and said, "Well, congratulations, but you have to do better." And that's why we're going to merge the museum together with 2 other art institutions like the Kunsthalle Brands and the Fine Arts Museum in Odense. That took us back a little bit. The new constellation Brands had to get rid of 3 museum directors, including my good friend and colleague Ingrid Fischer-Jonge. And the new director, who was then facing this enormous task of gluing 3 institutions together, obviously photography became or got to play the minor role in this new merger. And can you, when you don't really show that much photography, can you justify that you are going to publish and fund a magazine solely dedicated to photography and video? And the answer was, after a good long thinking pause, no, you can't. So the director, Mr. Amsbo, decided that he would scrap the magazine, and actually not just scrap it, but he gave it away to me. He said, Jens, you can have it. If you like to continue the publication, it's yours. You'll be the publisher. Had him sign a piece of paper, and he transferred not only the magazine in name, but also all the back issues to me in person. Little did he know that I'm a stubborn man, that I couldn't see that any one copy should be thrown out. So I hauled out all 11 tons myself into 15 pallets and have them in a storage house today. And I use them when I go abroad to visit festivals, and I would have used them today here in Frankfurt to hand out. I would have taken several boxes with me just to show you examples, just to show the audience examples of the magazine. During this pause of the magazine, because I had a leap year where the new director couldn't figure out whether he wanted to continue, and I was on paternity leave, I put together the index of Catalog, which was quite a challenge. After all, it was 25 years old, and you have to put all the names of all the artists in there and find out where they are. So proved to be a good selling point to institutions like university libraries or art libraries or museum libraries, because it's a great research tool. After all, it's 25 years. And you can go into the index, which is online on my website. You can go in here and say, Alvarez Bravo, Manuel Alvarez Bravo, he is in volume 1, issue 4, and in those pages and so forth. So if you want to find out what has been written about Bravo in Catalog, you have this research tool. And then I took a deep breath and I said, okay, I have an obligation. You can't just scrap a magazine after 25 years and say, okay, this is it. It's not digital. It's not current. Should I turn it into a digital platform? Should I just get a PDF designed and send it out per email? Is there any money in that as well? Should I just do a blog? What should I do? Should I print a newspaper stock, a newspaper? And I decided, no, I want to keep it. I want to keep it exactly as it is. And I spoke to one of the good designers, Mogens Winter, and he said, Jens, you should really keep it as it is, because you'll show continuity. You'll show that it's worth keeping the format, the files, keep it in the libraries, and it'll be the same. Big breath, and I issued the first issue 26 in my own name, in my own publishing company called Design Company. And ever since, I used to say that I had only 20 personal subscribers when I took over, and those were only 20 that were also friends of the Museum for Fotokunst in Odense. But I also had around about 80 international and national institutional libraries. And if I just could pump up the personal subscribers a bit through the next couple of years, then I would be okay. So 20 people, 20 subscribers was not a lot to start on. And today we're almost 500. So it's quite a success, I think. Now, going from being the calling card of the museum, Catalog has now become much more of an international platform. It's not my magazine. I always call it a platform for everybody to share and for everybody to chip in and contribute. So I've had the good fortune of collaborating with Niyati Shinde in India, introducing the readers to contemporary Indian photography, as well as Anna Tellgren of Moderna Museet in Stockholm, Laura Nissinen, a PhD student in Helsinki, Wendy Watrous of PhotoFest in Houston, Carlos Cavalos in Brazil, introducing Brazilian contemporary photography, Christina Autsen, who you'll hear later on, and obviously Beate and Sarah Giersing, and Catalog, David Drake in Cardiff. Catalog is also part of 2 transnational forums or platforms. One is called Parallel, which is EU funded. Its intention is to to connect up-and-coming artists with up-and-coming curators with established museums, and Catalog is very much something that can be used in that connection. And Catalog also collaborates with the Nordic photo festivals, and we always come up with a great topic for an upcoming issue. How do I get content in the magazine? Now, Sabine and Selina, you already pointed out that Houston is a very important place to connect, where you met Torben. Had to go all the way to Houston to meet him. That's where I also connect with other people. That's the bottom image here. This is Houston. Up here is Buenos Aires, and basically this is where I go and do portfolio reviews. I'm also part of a good platform called Oracle, where we exchange ideas. Here I've connected with the Canadian photographer Ed Baczynski, sorry. So I go and do portfolio reviews. I connect with people and suggest them to collaborate. Here it's David Drake, where we collaborated on an issue on revolution. He came up to me and said, I met him in Unseen at the festival in Amsterdam, and said, so what are you up to, David, next year? And he said, revolution. Oh, really? I said, I'm doing a revolution myself. I've collected images and photographers' names to do an issue on revolution. So we collaborated there. Up here are some Scandinavian or Nordic curators and Specie and Icelandic artists, and Elena Bruteros, Bert Tønnesen. So it's through my international network that I get suggestions from people that, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could do something about Indian contemporary photography, and that's how Catalog is put together. Always with a great labor of love with lots of great people. It's never by myself. I call myself the caretaker. I make sure that there's enough money to pay the designer and the postman and the printer, obviously. If you read through this, this will tell you that it's always in English in parallel text with Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish. I claim that we can, in Scandinavia, we can read and understand each other's languages. The name Flexiboard is meant to be what covers all the collaboration partners that I work with. Check out the website, obviously, because you'll see all the information. 4 recently published Danish photo books. This is the second part of my presentation. So I have to stress this is a personal selection. And here we go. First one is the beautiful book published by Søren Solkjær called Black Sun. He published it himself in his own publishing house, Edition Circle, it says, published last year. And he's photographed starlings, of the wonderful Tourette's the starlings do, the sort of a ballet they do in midair. You've probably all seen it. It's not only in Denmark they do it all over Europe, I guess, when they gather in Rome, they gather in France and in the Netherlands and north of Germany as well. When they settle for the night, they perform this wonderful ballet. And it's mesmerizing, and you'd say, why don't you film it? And when you try to photograph it yourself, you'll usually end up with blurry images because you have to work with a very fast shutter. And Søren Solkjær managed to pull it off because, well, I guess he's a very clever artist and also got good gear. But it's also a very nicely produced book. Now the idea is when you publish something on your own publishing house, the idea obviously is that you want to sell the copies yourself. You don't want to go, or some do, go through book dealers or bookstores. But a well-established name like Søren Solkjær could easily sell the books from his own website, which he has done. I think the first edition of this book has already sold out within a couple of months. It's a great Christmas present, I guess. Now, this ballet could be mimicked in the next book that I want to present you with, White Wall, From Black Sun to White Wall, by Ole Christiansen, who is a very established Danish photographer. He's worked within portraiture for many years, and it's published by architectural publisher B, which is a not so big publishing house, but it's got a very good reputation. They put out some very beautiful books. This is one of the beautiful books, I think. It just came out in the fall, in the autumn here. And he has pulled off to photograph the Starlings of the city of Copenhagen, people moving about, people in front of a wall, a white wall, dancing around, I should say, almost, just like a ballet of the Starlings. It's like calligraphy. Just as the Starlings are calligraphy, this could be conceived as calligraphy as well. Or like Indonesian puppets, shadow puppets. Third book, we're turning into the yellow sun. The picture of the yellow sun is by Lisbeth Johansen. Now, I've been a little bit cheeky because it's published by a publishing house in Malmö, which is on the other side in Sweden. But the photographer is Danish, and well, most people in Malmö are Swedish anyway, Danish anyway. She published this wonderful book about her father, who was a not too successful painter, and he suffered from schizophrenia. And she was very uncomfortable during her upbringing, when she was getting older, because he was not a pleasant man to be with, or you never knew where you had him. So this book is kind of coming to terms with his death and his legacy, and how did I relate to my father, and why didn't we get along well? Now, the title of the book is called The Picture of the Yellow Sun, and that's the painting that she sort of lost while tidying up, and afterwards she had it, this painting for a couple of years, and then she threw it out. And now, of course, that particular painting haunts her, because she wished that she'd never thrown it out. That's how it goes. And the way that idea links together with the last presentation is, I think, through Roland Barthes, the French philosopher and semiologist. The book is called Bagsider. It's published by Lars Kiel Bertelsen. He's the editor. He's been collecting photographs, found photographs, whatever he could find in the streets or in flea markets, or whatever he could pick up something from an anonymous photographer. And it's been going on for 25 years now. He decided, how can I celebrate this collection again and again? I could show the flip sides, the back cover of the photographs, and collaborated with an author called Gitte Broing, who wrote a text on what she would imagine that the photograph, what took place during the photographing during the production of this photograph. So here's an example. The young man has just placed himself on a stool in the photography studio, the photographer to his or her assistant. You can read it yourself. But she has sort of elaborated. She has, in a fictional way, tried to make a poem out of what you, if you saw the other side, the real side of the photograph, what you would think would have happened. And in a way, Roland Barthes comes in here because he centers his book Camera Lucida around this one photograph of his mother that he never shares with us, the readers. And we have to use our imagination, just as we have to use our imagination. What's going on in the front cover here, and just as yellow picture of the yellow sun, we also have to use our imagination there. We don't see that painting. So it's a nice little collaboration here between, and it's also provoking your imagination as a viewer. This was my personal selection, but if you want to read into a more sort of objective selection of Danish photography books throughout the first 150 years, I can suggest this coming out from Sarah Giersing's institution, 28 Danish photo books, which will take you through the most important photo books. But I will also suggest that if you really are a bibliophile, as it's called, you should get this book here by Niels Dejgaard. It's very comprehensive. It will take you through all books on photography in Denmark. Here is another book by Søren Solkjær, and here's another book by TORBEN ESKEROD and Christiansen that we had here. So that's the end of my presentation.